All signs point to this, as the Islanders need to make one more move in order to make their roster compliant for the regular season. And at this point, it is pretty clear what that move is going to be. We're going to break it all down on this episode of Islanders Digest. In addition, we're also going to talk about a future move that is likely in the future for the New York Islanders when you look at their defense that is going to be impacted by this move, as you have some young players who are knocking on the door, and frankly, there are just too many players for the Islanders in the left-handed defense position. Right before we get into that, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Our goal is 2,000 subscribers before the NHL season begins. The Islanders' first game will be on October 9th against the Pittsburgh Penguins this Thursday. Can't believe it is already almost here, and I'm looking forward to finally covering some Islanders games that actually matter. Sure, this preseason has been fun. It's been really good to see Mathew, Schaefer, Callum Ritchie, and a couple other standouts for the New York Islanders play, but now we get to see some actual games and really finally get to learn the answer for what this Islanders team is going to be this season. I still have so many questions. Looking at this roster, I think the Islanders are one of the more interesting teams in the league just because there is so much variability to what they are going to be. This is a team who I do think can contend for a wild card if everything goes right, but I also think it's a team that a whole lot can go wrong. At the very least, this is a good year for the Islanders, knowing that there are a lot of options at the draft. We're way too early to be discussing the draft. For now, let's talk about what move the Islanders are going to have to make. Looking at this roster, there is one too many players for the New York Islanders. You need to have your roster under 23 players. It doesn't matter what those players are. You can typically, a team will carry 14 forwards and 7 defensemen along with 2 goaltenders. We have seen teams in the past carry 3 goaltenders. Don't think that's going to be something the Islanders do. Genuinely, that works pretty poorly. We also see sometimes teams will carry 8 defensemen, which is something that Patrick Waugh did tease this preseason. He talked about potentially the Islanders holding on to 7 defensemen, but that is not going to be the case. I am telling you right now, tomorrow, Isaiah George is going to be sent down to the AHL, and I feel bad for Isaiah George because I think if it was not for the Islanders drafting Matthew Schaefer, he was a surefire player who was going to get time in this Islanders top 6 to start the season. I think he had a pretty solid preseason. I'll note, while he was not very explosive in those games, he is a defensive defenseman. And Isaiah George's job is for you to not really notice him when he's playing, to get the puck out quickly and effectively. And he pretty much did that in every single game he played for the New York Islanders this preseason. It's going to be good for him, I think, to get more time in the preseason. It would not have been good for him to be sitting in the press box and watching the team play. That doesn't help his development in any way, especially considering he has only played 33 games in the AHL. In fact, he's played the same amount of games in the AHL that he's played in the NHL, and it will be good for him to finally get some experience on an AHL team that's actually a winning team. While Isaiah George has been great in his short stints as a professional hockey player, he's done a whole lot of losing because the Islanders were really struggling when he was up last season, missing all those defensemen. And, well, we know what the Bridgeport Islanders were. You can't even look at some of his stats in the AHL because that team was such a disaster by the time he joined them. Now, you're probably wondering what's going on with Callum Ritchie. Because he was injured, he cannot be sent down, so the Islanders don't really need to make a decision on him. He's pretty much going to stay on the team in terms of the IR until he's healthy, and the same goes for Ethan Bear and a couple other players that were injured this Islanders training camp. This will only affect the Islanders. They're going to have to lose a bit of money in the salary cap for Callum Ritchie since he did play 7 games for the Colorado Avalanche. This is not going to affect the Islanders cap position at all because the Islanders are not using LTIR this season. They're trying to accrue cap for the deadline. What they're really doing, it's not that they're going to acquire players on the deadline necessarily, although they could if they wanted to. The reason why the Islanders are accruing cap and therefore not putting players like Varlamov and Engvall on the LTIR, even though they know, especially for Engvall, that he's going to be gone for a while, is simple. They have a little space as it is, about $700,000, and as the season goes, that's going to grow. And while that might not matter for adding a player in the short term, where that's really going to be helpful is the Islanders have several young players in Matthew Schaefer and Maxim Shabanov who have made the team. And that means if they have good seasons, they are going to need bonuses. And the Islanders can use that money they accrue throughout the season to pay those bonuses so they don't have to lose money for the salary cap in the future. So that is why you'll be asking throughout the season, why don't the Islanders use LTIR? That is why they will not be using it. And as a result, it's clear that Isaiah George is going to be the player that is sent down because simply today was the deadline to put a player on waivers to be compliant tomorrow, and the Islanders did not put anybody on waivers. If Isaiah George was going to make this team, then you would have seen either Gatko, McLean, or Adam Boqvist sent on waivers today. That's not the case. Really does not make sense for the Islanders at this point in time to send one of these players down on waivers, especially considering that Isaiah George was not going to crack the top 6 anyway. Again, if somebody gets injured, they can call him up. There's really no penalty for the Islanders to have Isaiah George not playing in the press conference. Even if only one defenseman gets injured, they don't have to put Adam Boqvist in the next game. Isaiah George can still be the first call-up onto the main roster, even if he is starting the AHL. All this means is he is going to get games, and I don't think this is going to be the end of the story. For the record, I think Isaiah George is going to play many games in the NHL this season. For one, I hate to say it, there are definitely going to be injuries to the defense as the season goes on. We've seen it the past 2 years. The Islanders' defense has been very injury-prone. But beyond that, just looking at this team's depth, there is a logjam on the left defensive position, and as I teased earlier on in this video, a trade or a move is eventually going to happen. Something is going to have to give when you look at the left side of this defense, because Mathew Schaefer, while currently he is a third pair defenseman, if this season goes the way you want it to for the Islanders, he is going to work his way up the lineup. And currently, you have 2 left-handed defensemen already making what you would consider a top 4 money in the NHL, in Adam Pelech and Alex Romanov. And once Mathew Schaefer takes that role and he runs with it and he shows he is a top 4 defenseman in an NHL roster, then I think the Islanders are going to be under some pressure to make a move. And it doesn't necessarily have to be during this season, although I really think the deadline in particular is going to be a really golden opportunity for the Islanders to move a player like Adam Pelech. And this is something I'm really looking into more carefully, especially now that we see the cost of defensemen in the NHL is rising. We just saw Mikko Mikkola sign a contract for 8 seasons at $5 million with the Florida Panthers. And Mikko Mikkola is a great defenseman. He has really good underlying numbers. He's also a very gritty player. I think when the Florida Panthers are playing best, he is a third pair defenseman, but he can eat up second pair minutes. But honestly, in my opinion, he is not in the same caliber of a player like Adam Pelech or a player like Alexander Romanov. So to see a player like Mikko Mikkola making that type of money, that reaffirms that defensemen are making a lot of money, and as a result, a contract like Adam Pelech's is going to be very valuable. And that might shock a lot of people. I know last year we were talking, and a lot of people seem to comment thinking that Adam Pelech was untradeable because of his contract. That is not the case at all. Now, he does have a 16-team no-trade list, but from those 16 teams, I think there's going to be a lot of interest in this player if the Islanders do choose to move on from him. And I think, especially with Isaiah George knocking on the door, that is going to be the right decision, assuming there are no injuries. Of course, other things can happen with this defense. We've seen it. It's been a disaster in the past, and Adam Pelech, for the record, if this is going to happen, does have to stay healthy. But when he's playing his game at age 31, still able to provide 4 more years of quality defense, I think Adam Pelech really gets underrated at a time. This is a move that I really am looking into this season, especially if the Islanders do start to lose games. Hopefully they are competitive, and even then, I don't think that necessarily rules out an Adam Pelech trade, or even a trade we've been talking about, JG Pageau and Anders Lee. I don't think it rules out anything. This might be a team that might be close to the playoffs and might make moves to sell and buy at the same time, trying to get younger while also improving the roster. That would definitely be a really interesting scenario. But no matter what, I definitely think Adam Pelech is going to be a move just looking at this logjam. And I think the Islanders are going to get a real good return. In fact, of all the players we talked about as potential trade candidates between Pelech, Pageau, and Lee, I think Pelech gets the largest return by a wide margin just because he's locked up for the next 4 years at 5.7. And with that salary cap going up, as we are seeing now with defensive contracts, they are going to get so much more expensive, where that contract is going to look a lot more attractive to a contending team trying to keep 6 solid defensemen together without paying too many assets. I think if the Islanders are going to get a third first-round pick in this draft, Adam Pelech likely is the best option. But let me know in the comments what you think about this. What do you think about this Islanders roster to start the season? Are there any surprises? Or is there anything that's disappointing you looking at this Islanders lineup? We will go in more depth and lines in a later video, but for now, we're just focusing on who the players are who are going to make the Islanders. I understand some fans are going to be set about Callum Ritchie, even if he's not technically being cut. It's clear about the moves they're making. They are going to start the season with Callum Ritchie in the AHL, assuming there are no injuries between now and the time that he returns from his injury, which should be a week-to-week injury. It's not very concerning. He should be on the ice by the end of this week. Did not skate today, but I'm not very concerned with Callum Ritchie. But let me know in the comments if there are any surprises with this opening lineup for the New York Islanders. And considering the season's about to begin, let me know what your expectations are for this team. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Appreciate your support as we continue to make Islanders content every single day. I'm your host, Patrick Nilan. Catch you on the next episode of Islanders Digest. Let's go, Islanders.